Yo sup! Looks like we got an early Christmas. 4 new Ritual Beast supports. If you want to have a look at all of them, link would be in the description to the news. And ignore the URL. Totally go ahead and buy Zebras. Alright, so 4 new cards, that means I'm going to be doing 4 videos. I'm choosing to start with this card, Reiju no Keisho, or Ritual Beast Inheritance, just because I think it's the easiest of the bunch to explain without cross-referencing the other new cards, so I'm gonna do it in this order. Now, obviously, Ritual Beast, one of my favorite archetypes, Dual Terminal storyline, one of my favorite stories. It's great to see that they're like fully committed into continuing the Dual Terminal storyline finally. Hopefully, some of my other favorite Dual Terminal archetypes can get some support as well, although I don't know, I feel like there's not that much hope for it, mainly because if you look at the artworks of the 4 new cards, it does show that the Ritual Beasts are now riding on top of the Yang Zings. Yeah, so that kind of diminishes the hope of Yang Zing support a bit. Another thing to note is, if you look at the picture of this card specifically, we got Pilika here and we got Windy here. Neither of them have their Zephyr wings anymore, right? They don't have their Zephyr wings anymore, which kind of tells me that maybe the Zephyr storyline has completely ended as well. So there probably won't be any Zephyr support in the future as well. Yeah, if we continue looking at the artwork, it's a great piece of artwork. The third character here, we got Lara over here, and we have, I'm guessing, this is baby Apelio. Even though, you know, Windy is like a prodigy, Pilika, both of them had like Zephyr powers. Really, the real MVP of the war in Dual Terminal is probably Lara, because she was riding on top of Gaia Pelio, which is like a god tier beast basically, right? So here's Gaia Pelio. It's got the fire, which symbolizes her original steed, Apelio. It's got the trees, which is like Leo. Leo is basically a demigod tier in the Dual Terminal lore, as well as Kirkion Wings, which is like a god tier thing in the Dual Terminal world as well. So yeah, I think this artwork, what it shows, like all these pieces of Gaia Pelio just exploding. I'm guessing OT Gaia Pelio got dismantled. Name is Inheritance, and it does seem like Gaia Pelio has been dismantled. However, none of these 3 characters in the picture look particularly sad. In fact, they kind of look happy. Like Lara here is pretty happy. So I'm guessing no one died. The other new card artwork, Lara did inherit the Kirkion Wings. It looked like this baby Apelio right here. I feel like it's a reincarnation of Apelio. Like obviously if Apelio just died, she wouldn't be this happy. Here's Apelio. Yeah, it does feel like a reincarnation of sorts, so that might be a reason why Lara is now riding on top of Yang Zings rather than her original steed, which is Apelio, since it's probably a baby now and it'll take some years for it to grow up. But yeah, I think that's about all we can deduct from the picture. So on to the actual card. So it's a continuous spell, which is nice. You know that Ritual Beasts have very high searchability of every card in its archetype. So this being a continuous spell basically means you can expect this to be up like 100% of the time. And since it has sort of 2 debuff effects, you can just kind of expect when you're up against Ritual Beasts, both of these debuff effects are going to be up all of the time. So it's pretty cool. It has a total of 3 effects. So effects 1 and 3 I'll talk about first. Effect 2 is the actual good effect. If we go by old Dual Terminal card design, this card would probably be like 3 separate different cards. That's why we had all these really janky cards back then. If you think about like Yangzing Unleashed or like Yangzing Brutality, the type of effects they have would be like effect 1 or like effect 3 in a card, which that completely does not justify it being a card on its own. They're nice bonus effects to have on top of an actual effect that makes a card worth 1 card, which is effect 2 here. So I really like this card design. And in general, all of the new Ritual Beast support I really like as well, mainly because of the lack of restrictions. If you remember from when I talked about the new wave of Dragoonity support, I mainly did not like them due to how xenophobic the card design was and how it keeps locking you into like dragons and whatnot, which was, yeah, pretty annoying and bland, boring card design. None of these 4 new cards have that problem, which really brings out the best in, deck builders and deck building. So yeah, let's go through the effects one by one. Effect 1, continuous effect. Monsters your opponent control loses 200 attack for each different type among Ritual Beast monsters you control. So realistically, this would probably never go above 600, because I don't see you like having more than 3 types on the field at the same time most of the time, unless you're specifically trying to go for it. Like if we talk about this in a defensive way, so what it does on your opponent's turn, you'll probably be tagging multiple Ritual Beasts out on your opponent's turn. And of course, each time you tag out, one of the guys that you summon has to be a Psychic. So you're going to have multiple Psychics on the field, which is why I don't feel like it's ever going to go above a 600 debuff. As an offensive option, so on your turn, I also don't see it going over like 600 most of the time. Like sure, you have a lot of types, like for example, alright, like Rampengu here, it's a beast, right? The only beast for ritual beasts. But like, I just don't see why you would leave a defense position Rampengu on the field just for this effect. Like just to make their monsters lose 200 more. You're most likely gonna contact or link that Rampengu off into a bigger monster when you're making your attack. It is worth to note that there's no restrictions on how many of this card you can activate per turn and how many of it you can have on the field at the same time. So if you have three of this card on the field at the same time, and you have 3 different types of Ritual Beasts on the field, and that's 200 each, this will stack. So that's 1800 minus 1800 attack for all of your opponent's monsters if you have like 3 of this card on the field at the same time, and that's quite significant. Another, yeah, I mean like minus 1800, imagine if your opponent just has like a 2400 attack Appaloosa, like you basically just negated the Appaloosa because it'll be down to 600 attack, so I can't lose 800 attack to activate its effect. So yeah, this is again a very nice, cool bonus effect. Ritual Beasts sometimes do have problems dealing with high monsters. Like if you just have a 600 debuff, your OT Apelios are basically like 3200 attack, and your OT Pedalfins are basically 3400 defense, indestructible. It seems like a pretty solid defensive lineup, if you ask me. So yeah, that's really fun. Next, we'll skip over effect 2 for now, because that requires the most explaining, so I'll leave that to last. So effect 3, if 2 or more monsters are special summoned to your field at the same time, you can target 1 monster on the field, change its battle position. So if you tag out, you get to switch the battle position of a monster on the field. I really like this design. Although it is a hard once per turn, so the third effect is a hard once per turn effect, even if you have multiples, you can still only switch something once per turn. You know, I like how it doesn't specify your turn or your opponent's turn, so it has both offensive and defensive capabilities. I also like how it changes the battle position of one monster on the field, so not just your opponent's monsters. Again, leading on to the fact that, you know, it has both offensive and defensive capabilities. Alright, so at first glance, an effect like this might seem pretty useless. You know, obviously you can't switch link monsters, and when people attack they tend to have multiple threats on the field at the same time. Like combining it with the -200 per type, they might not even be able to produce several monsters on the field that is a threat to like your ulti Pendelfin, for example. Maybe switching one is enough. Another thing to note, when using this card defensively, cards like Kashtira Fenrir are very successful to being switched into defense mode. However, obviously if you tag out using a monster effect into two monsters, to switch the Kashtira Fenrir to defense mode is kind of like useless, since Fenrir will get to use this effect as well. But if you're using something like Ambush to summon two monsters and then triggering this effect to switch to defense mode, you do in fact completely nullify that Fenrir banish, which is nice. So yeah, like because I've been playing some Virtual World, and the really bad trap, so not Chuche is actually good, the other trap which is really bad, switch to defense mode, it actually is really good against like Kashtira monsters, which is what I've learned. So that's using it in a defensive way. Using it in an offensive way is kind of like where the fun really is, because you have a lot of battle phase tricks into OTKs now. All of the OTs, like OT Apelio, OT Kanahawk, etc., they always tag out in defense mode. So you can't just like tag out and like keep attacking, but this effect lets you do that. So, for example, if you swing with OT Apelio for 26, it won't get any like regular Apelio 500 boost because it negates itself, protects itself from its plus 500 attack boost. You can tag out into regular Apelio and a Tamer, and then on summon you use effect 3 to switch the battle position of Apelio to attack mode. And if you've used Apelio before this turn, usually you probably have, and now you get to use Apelio again, so Apelio will go up to 28. You can swing for 28, and you activate something like Ritual Beast Bond back into OT Apelio. That's 26 plus 28 plus 26, which is exactly 8,000. So stuff like that you can do with this card on your turn when given the opportunity to do so. It's a very neat and fun effect. Now, to the main effect that actually makes this card a card. Like effect 1 is honestly an effect that's only worth like 0. That's worth like a third of a card, and effect 3 is like another effect that's only worth like a third of a card. If you print it on a single card with no other effects, like they just wouldn't be considered at all. Effect 2 by itself is actually an effect that's worth like a whole card. So when you have an effect like this combined with 2 other effects, bonus effects, it just makes this card a pretty decent card, right? So effect 2 reads, you can reveal one Ritual Beast monster in your hand and one Ritual Beast monster with a different type from your deck to your hand, then discard one card. And the second effect, which is this effect, has a hard once per turn on it. It's great, right? Like, it's a continuous spell that searches. It's basically like the DDD contract. Every turn that you survive and that this card survives is going to guarantee you basically full combo on your following turn. And this deck now actually is a 1-card combo deck with the other 3 pieces of support. So this card just like being there is actually like quite a big threat that they need to deal with. Yeah, so search 1, yeah, if you just search like Carnahawk, that's like 1-card combo now. Then discard 1 card. So obviously this is like new card design to prevent new archetypes from just like infinitely plussing. Like most searches these days that's like printed has this discard 1 card restriction on it. Ritual Beast, of course, couldn't care less due to the sheer number of cards that you're going to be searching per turn. You're probably going to be searching like 4 or 5 cards every single turn, so discard 1 card is not a cost. But I guess it's also worth to think if there are any benefits, like cards that benefit from being discarded. Obviously nowadays, now there are, this deck has quite a few cards that interact with the graveyard. Traditionally, Ritual Beast has always played with the Banish pile as a second hand. Now with the new wave of support, the graveyard is kind of like a third hand that Ritual Beast can play with. So just simply discarding Ritual Beast cards is kind of beneficial already, which is nice. Usually when cards like this is printed, like cards with discard 1 card is printed, the first thing that comes to mind is things like Water Enchantress of the Temple is probably the best discard in the game. However, this deck is gonna need to activate like several normal summon effects per turn, so we're obviously not gonna be running the Adventure Engine in here. What I do feel like might be a viable card to run in Ritual Beast going forward are Dangers. I mean, obviously not just to benefit with Inheritance's discard 1 card. That's only 1 card in the deck, and the rest of the deck has like no cards that say discard on it, right? But I feel like going forward, this deck can totally be a link spamming deck, just based on how many bodies these new support place on the field each turn. Dangers, of course, also being, you know, part of that link spamming culture, right? And then you also get the added bonus of this, and if your Dangers discard Ritual Beasts, again, the graveyard is now like a third hand for Ritual Beasts, so that's like another layer of synergy. I think it could work, although the extra deck would be very tight right now if you do try to incorporate like half, like a dozen link monsters in there. So something to work out, but I do see the potential in that. And that's mainly because none of the new support or old support outside of Ritual Beast Ambush, which has a restriction on the turn you use it, you can only summon Ritual Beast monsters. Apart from this restriction, and I guess if you're trying to run, where is she? Wind the Wind Channeler, she has the restriction on you can only activate wind monsters for the rest of the turn after you use her to search. I mean, she's optional, you don't have to run her, but apart from these 2 cards, the deck actually has no restrictions whatsoever on what you can summon or what effects you can use. So yeah, just something else to consider. when I say like I feel like this deck has the potential to be a generic Link spamming deck. But yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about this card. It's really good, right? Like, I think this is probably an instant 3 of, even though this deck has high searchability and you always have this up, just based on the fact that the first effect can stack, and it's basically a rotor in a deck that can 1-card combo. I think there's no reason not to run 3 of this card. So yeah, very good. We're off to a great start with the new support. Let's see what the second card has to offer for us.